capacity as spokesperson for disability for Sinn Féin, the issue around Western Care was brought to my attention by Deputy Rose Conway-Walsh, and I suppose I've had occasion to meet with current and former members of staff to discuss their concerns in more detail as well. And I mean, Western Care offered the opportunity for people with intellectual disabilities to live in their community in independent lives with the appropriate support. And of course, that is the right way to go, and that's what should be happening. However, if that support is not satisfactory, if the living conditions are not up to scratch, or the support is not sufficient or appropriate, then people suffer, and they are our most vulnerable citizens. Now, I want to commend many of the staff in Western Care who go above and beyond the call of duty to ensure that the residents are living their best lives possible, and commend the residents and their families for trying to make Western Care a success. But the concerns that staff had about some of the issues in Western Care were so serious that they were prompted to make protected disclosures. And those disclosures need to be taken seriously, and those members of staff need to be supported, and the issues dealt with, investigated and dealt with. Now, HICWA have had concerns since 2017 that the individual centres weren't registered, that a loophole was being exploited, so that they could avoid HICWA inspection. When in 2021 they were allowed to inspect a small number of services, they found that they should have been registered in the first place. Now, there are 104 individualist services. How many of them should be registered? They're saying 47. Why not all of them? I think this needs to be investigated properly to ensure that those services that should be registered are, so that they can be inspected properly by HICWA. And as Minister for Disability, I think you need to step in here and ensure that there is proper accountability on what's happening in Western Care to ensure that the best service possible is provided. Thank you.
And thank you, and I want to thank Deputy Conway-Walsh and the spokesperson on disability for bringing this matter topical before us this morning. To discuss Western Care Association is funded by the HSE under the Section 39 Health Act 2004, providing service to over 700 children, young people and adults with learning disabilities in the catchment area of County Mayo. That's a considerable number of individuals that Western Care supports. Recent matters of concern are understood to relate to regulatory compliance and regulatory protection for certain services. And I take on board, Deputy, what you say. It's not that recent if we're talking 2017. I want to take that on board. I am advised that Western Care Association has 35 designated centres registered with HICWA. These designated centres currently provide full-time residential support to 105. In addition to this, Western Care also supports a further cohort of people by way of what the organisation terms individualised services. Under the Health Act 2007, the requirement for registration with HICWA applies to residential disability services, including residential respite. HICWA determines which services come within its ambit in accordance with the relevant statutory provisions, and the authority is examining this in respect of the organisation. Additionally, HICWA has responsibility for setting standards for healthcare services and monitoring compliance with those standards. It also regulates facilities providing care for those with disabilities to determine if they are meeting the relevant national standard. The Chief Inspector of Social Services, HICWA, has assured me that her office is actively engaging with Western Care and that the action has been taken to prioritise the safety and quality of care and support residents and working is ongoing to ensure that residents have the appropriate regulatory protection. An escalated level of inspection activity in Western Care Association has been initiated, and the Chief Inspector's team is engaging with the organisation's Board of Directors and Executive Management. The HSE is also engaging with Western Care to address any immediate concerns and to prioritise actions with a focus on improving outcomes for persons supported by the organisation. And the HSE is working with Western Care in terms of its service agreement and its service improvement framework process. So there is a lot of work ongoing between the regulatory body, the HSE, the board, the management, and I want to thank the people who have come forward, who have highlighted. I want to thank the staff that work within Western Care and the continuous care that they give. But I also want to give reassurance to the families of the 700 who would have loved ones participating. We all know that Western Care is a fantastic service provider in Mayo, but we also need to bring that reassurance piece to it, that their loved ones are protected and minded to the highest possible standard. So I thank ICWA for what they are doing.
Thank you.
Minister, I've engaged with a number of organisations that are in a similar situation where there have been concerns expressed by the management of the centre or the conduct of some staff, and where protected disclosures have been made in the instance as well. I find the HSE tend not to run or provide disability services in a lot of cases. They seem to refer Section 39 organisations or charities to do so, and that's fine if there's proper oversight. But a lot of the time an allocated budget is given and there's very little accountability about how that's spent. Now, I'm not saying it's spent badly or anything like that. There's a lot of very good service going on, a lot of provision, but there are opportunities for fraud, and that's happening too. And when things go wrong, I find the HSE sweep in, maybe dismiss a few people, hire an investigator at a high cost to come up with a predetermined outcome, and very often the person who first raised the concerns and made the protected disclosure are scapegoated and end up being ostracised as Deputy Conway Walsh, and that has to stop. These people have to be protected for doing the right thing.
Conway Walsh, the Government is committed to providing services and support for people with disabilities which will empower them to live their lives, provide greater independence in accessing the services that they choose. I think it's important as well for me to say that it is nearly over a year and a half ago since I have stood here on the floor of the Dáil and where we discussed the Brandon report. At that stage, I looked for all across the House for support in relation to the Brandon, in the publishing of the Brandon report. Deputy Pringle was a lone voice at that stage. I think it needs to be understood the relevance of safeguarding, the importance of safeguarding, and the importance of actually, and in that stage it was the HSE. So I don't take it that it is just the charitable organisations that lack scrutiny. I say all lack scrutiny. I think all need to have a proper framework put in place to ensure that there is a reassurance for the families, the individuals that are living in care settings, that there is the proper safeguarding mechanisms in place, and that there is an understanding of the culture and the relationships within all the organisations. So I call on you again to work with me in relation to the Brandon report and actually getting a proper mechanism put in place in relation to Brandon, because if that is sorted, we will have a proper process for the entire country in relation to reassurance. Thank you.